Imagine for a second that you are waiting up for your teenager.
Right.
It is Halloween weekend. The clocks have just fallen back, granting you that, that strange extra hour of the night where time just feels a little untethered.
Oh, yeah, that weird liminal space.
Exactly. So you are standing at a picture window on the middle floor of your suburban house, and you're looking out into the damp sort of grayscale October mist.
Mm-hmm.
And you watch your 18-year-old son jog up the street. And immediately, the relief washes over you. He's safe. He's almost home.
The universal parent sigh of relief right there.
Right. But then he stops. He confronts a stranger on the pavement. And right there, under the yellow cinematic glare of a street lamp, you watch your son pull his arm back and plunge a knife into this man's chest.
Wow.
Yeah. He is arrested. His hands are completely covered in blood. And his only explanation to you, his mother, as he's being put into the back of a police cruiser, is 3 chilling words. He just says, "I had to."
I mean, that is just the absolute pinnacle of parental terror. It creates this brutal binary fracture in a family's reality.
Oh, complete.
There's the timeline before the knife goes in, and then the permanent shattered timeline after. And, most crime fiction starts right there and asks us to move forward, to navigate the wreckage and try to find justice.
Which is precisely why our mission for this deep dive is to explore a narrative that completely shatters that forward momentum. Today, we are immersing ourselves in the source material for Gillian McAllister's thriller, Wrong Place, Wrong Time.
Yes, such an incredible premise.
It really is. It's a story that begins with that exact bloody murder on a driveway, but it delivers a massive structural twist. Because when the mother, Jen, wakes up the next morning, it is not the day after the murder.
Right.
It is the day before.
It's so good.
So we're going to unpack the intricate mechanics of this time-traveling mystery. We'll dissect the anatomy of these deeply buried family secrets and really examine the psychological reality of how the past inexorably shapes our present.
And the structural choice here is really what elevates the material from a standard procedural into this profound psychological puzzle. Because we are so deeply conditioned as consumers of media to expect the whodunit, right?
Yeah, the classic forward engine.
Exactly, a narrative engine that propels us forward to catch a killer, gather clues, restore order. But by inverting the timeline, the author constructs a wide unit.
A wide unit. I love that phrasing.
Yeah, and by forcing the narrative backward, day by day, then month by month, and eventually year by year, the story actively dismantles our initial assumptions about every single character. It forces you, the listener, to realize that the inception of a violent act almost never happens on the day the blood is actually spilled.
Let's focus on that concept of inception, actually, because the book grounds this extraordinary premise in incredibly mundane, relatable details.
Yeah, to make the magic work.
Right. We start on day 0, the day the timeline breaks. We're in the back end of Crosby, Merseyside. It's misty, it's colorless, bitterly cold. And we are introduced to Jen, our protagonist.
Our very stressed protagonist.
Oh, incredibly stressed. She is a lawyer, and she's someone who cares intensely, perhaps overwhelmingly, about everything. I mean, to give you an idea of her mental state, she spends the evening before the murder badly carving a pumpkin she doesn't even want to carve.
Right. Purely out of a sense of performative suburban obligation.
Exactly, because the neighbors are doing it. And then we have her husband, Kelly. He's presented as this stoic, seemingly uncomplicated floor restorer who listens to audio, works alone, and entirely avoids the corporate rat race that his wife is so trapped in.
And the text deliberately establishes this stark contrast between them to anchor the surrealism that follows.
Yeah.
Jen is the anxious, hyper-observant nightingale, and Kelly is the detached, easygoing lark. But McAllister uses highly visceral, slow-motion imagery to really ground the sheer horror of the inciting incident.
The stabbing itself.
Exactly. When their skinny, nerdy 18-year-old son, Todd, stabs this older stranger, the scene is illuminated by this wrought iron, almost Narnia-style lamp outside their house.
That imagery is so haunting.
It is. And the sensory detail that really angers the trauma is the moment the knife is pulled back. 2 white feathers drift from the victim's torn puffer jacket, falling like snowflakes in the frozen air.
Wow. And the auditory details are just as striking, Todd drops the knife, and the text describes it ringing out like a church bell hitting the frozen pavement.
Oof.
But the true psychological agony sets in during the immediate aftermath at the Crosby police station, because we see the family dynamic just fracture in real time.
It completely breaks down.
Yeah. Kelly drops his stoic, easygoing facade entirely. He is furious, pacing, outwardly aggressive. Jen is paralyzed by shock, entirely failing to be the sharp, take-charge lawyer she's known to be at work.
Right.
And Todd is the most disturbing of all. He is utterly resigned. He willingly puts his wrists together for the cuffs. He simply says, I had to.
And that resignation is the terrifying hook. There is no teenage panic. There's no desperate pleading of innocence, no tears.
None of it.
It's just the grim acceptance of a martyr completing a necessary task, which leaves Jen drowning in a vacuum of information. Like, how did the son she folded Christmas pajamas for become a murderer?
Right. Is it gang initiation? Is it a radical political act?
Exactly. She falls asleep on day 0 with her reality completely obliterated, carrying the weight of an unanswerable question.
But the twist comes the next morning. Jen wakes up. She is in her bed. It is light out. She goes downstairs, bracing herself for the absolute worst, preparing to make the agonizing calls to defense lawyers, preparing to visit her son in a holding cell.
The nightmare routine.
Yeah. She looks out the window for the blood stain on the driveway, but the concrete is completely clean.
Wow.
She walks into the kitchen, and the pumpkin she carved the night before, it's sitting on the counter, entirely uncarved.
That gave me chills.
Me too. She checks her phone. It's Thursday, October 27th, day -1. She survives the confusion of that day, goes to sleep, and wakes up on Wednesday, day -2.
And the psychological terror of this realization is handled incredibly well in the source material. Because her initial reaction isn't awe or like this superhero desire to fix things. It is pure visceral nausea.
Right. She's physically ill.
She throws up in the kitchen sink. She assumes she's experiencing a severe psychiatric break. Because if tomorrow is yesterday, the entire causal foundation of her existence has been inverted. Everything she thought she knew about cause and effect is suddenly null and void.
To put this in perspective for the listener, the best mechanical way I can describe Jen's situation is to think about a software engineer trying to debug a massive, complex program.
Okay, I like this analogy.
Right. When a piece of software crashes, the fatal error isn't usually at the very end of the script. The crash is just the symptom. The actual problem is a tiny missing semicolon or a corrupted line of code from thousands of lines earlier.
Yes.
So Jen is essentially being forced to scroll backward through the code of her own life, searching for the tiny glitch from years ago that caused her family to fatally crash on day 0.
That's a great way to look at it.
But let me push back on this entire premise for a second. If she is traveling backward, day by day, we run into a massive narrative problem.
Okay, what's that?
Does anything she does in the past actually stick? Because if her actions don't have permanent consequences, if she is just a tourist observing a museum exhibit of her own history, then all the tension completely evaporates.
Well, that is the exact logistical paradox Jen has to solve before she can take any meaningful action. She needs a rule book for a universe she doesn't understand.
Right.
So to attempt to map this out, she seeks out a coworker's friend who is a physics PhD named Andy Vettiz. They dive into theoretical physics, specifically discussing the concept of a closed, time-like curve.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, in strict general relativity, this requires an unimaginable, universe-bending gravitational force like a black hole to warp space-time back on itself, allowing a particle to return to its own past.
Okay, I have to stop you there because the conversation with Andy Vettiz actually frustrated me at first glance.
Why is that?
Well, if we are establishing rules based on closed time-like curves, we are committing to strict, rigid physics. But then Andy pivots and suggests this time loop is triggered by trauma. That feels like a massive contradiction to me.
It does feel like a leap.
Yeah, how do we reconcile hard quantum mechanics with the magical realism of a mother's grief?
It requires us to look at how the narrative uses physics as a functional metaphor rather than a literal mechanical engine. I mean, Andy isn't diagnosing a black hole in her kitchen.
Right.
He is providing a framework for her to understand her agency. He theorizes that this extreme phenomenon is an impossible physical manifestation of a psychological state. It's a mother's desperate, retroactive need to fix her child's catastrophic mistake.
Okay, that makes sense.
And Andy offers a crucial reframing of her mission. He suggests the loop might not be about finding the physical moment to tackle Todd to the ground and stop the crime. It might be about gaining the knowledge required to understand it.
And as a lawyer, understanding the why is exactly how you build a defense. Andy poses a brilliant hypothetical to test the mechanics, actually. He asks her, what happens if she wins the lottery on day -10 and then falls asleep and wakes up on day -11? Does she still have the winning ticket?
Such a good question.
Right. And Andy suggests she wouldn't. He theorizes that the universe will ruthlessly self-correct, erasing any self-serving deviations she attempts to make, because her singular gravitational purpose in this loop is to gather the precise information needed to dismantle the crime's inception point.
And this functional rule completely alters her behavioral strategy. If we accept Andy's theory, Jen cannot simply make a change on day -5 and then fast forward day 0 to check if it worked.
No fast-forwarding allowed.
Right. The timeline only moves in one direction.
Yeah.
Backward. Her only way out is through the deep past. She has to shed the identity of a helpless, horrified bystander on the driveway and adopt the persona of an active, ruthless private investigator infiltrating her own family.
Which introduces an impossible logistical nightmare. I mean, if her goal is to gather information about what her son was doing in the days leading up to the murder, how does she interrogate him?
She can't.
Exactly. Every time she goes to sleep, the world resets. If she presses Todd for answers on day -3, he won't remember the conversation when she wakes up on day -4. This forces Jen into a massive ethical compromise. She realizes that to save her son, she has to violate his privacy completely.
And we see this play out on day -4. Jen takes the opportunity to systematically search Todd's bedroom while he's out of the house.
Oh, yeah.
From a psychological standpoint, ransacking your own child's sanctuary is a profound boundary violation. But what she unearths immediately validates her intrusion.
It's wild what she finds.
She finds a highly disturbing cache of items hidden away. She discovers a leather wallet containing a legitimate police badge belonging to an officer named Ryan Hiles, badge number 2648.
A literal police badge.
Yes. And she finds a dog-eared A4 missing baby poster for an infant named Eve Green, which has a tiny pinhole in the corner, indicating it had been pinned up somewhere important, stared at, obsessed over.
So creepy.
And finally, she finds a cheap burner phone containing cryptic text messages to an unknown woman named Nicola Williams.
If you are listening to this, put yourself in Jen's shoes for a moment. You operate under the assumption that you know your child. Jen believes Todd is a harmless, slightly pretentious teenager who spends his time building computers and rolling his eyes at his parents.
Right.
To strip back the floorboards of his life and find him entangled with missing infants, dead police officers, and burner phones, it induces severe cognitive whiplash.
It completely shatters her illusion of him.
Exactly. It begs a deeply uncomfortable question. At what point does our innate maternal or paternal instinct blind us to the objective reality of who our children are becoming? Throughout the source material, Jen is plagued by the guilt of the working mother. She constantly feels she was at the office too much, that she missed the subtle warning signs.
And that guilt is the engine of the hindsight paradox. It is a well-documented cognitive bias, often referred to in psychology as retrospective determinism.
Retrospective determinism. Okay.
Yes. When a tragedy occurs, parents inherently believe the outcome of the event was predictable and therefore preventable.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
They comb through their memories, highlighting their own mundane failures as the definitive cause of the disaster. When Jen finds the police badge and the burner phone, her immediate internal narrative is entirely self-blaming. She thinks, I caused this, I wasn't present enough, and my absence created a void that a violent gang filled.
Wow.
But the physical evidence she is synthesizing points to a reality far more complex than a teenager simply falling in with a bad crowd.
Right, because she starts pulling on the threads of these names. She discovers that Todd's new girlfriend, Cleo, isn't just a random teenager. She is the niece of a major local crime boss named Joseph Jones.
Right.
And the victim bleeding out on her driveway on Halloween, that was Joseph Jones. The pieces are snapping together. But here is where the mechanical reality of her investigation shatters her worldview entirely. Jen realizes it wasn't just her teenage son keeping catastrophic secrets. It was Kelly.
Kelly.
Her simple, stoic, podcast-listening husband.
Yes, she uncovers a layer of deception that fundamentally destabilizes her reality. She learns that Kelly is the one who confronted Todd and demanded he stop seeing Cleo.
Okay, so he knew.
He knew. Even more damning, she discovers that the burner phone hidden in Todd's room, the one texting the mysterious Nicola Williams, doesn't belong to Todd at all. It belongs to Kelly.
That blew me away.
Her husband is intimately connected to a violent crime syndicate, and he has been lying to her face about it.
But wait, mechanically, how does a suburban floor restorer maintain a burner phone and a secret connection to a crime boss under the nose of a highly observant, hyper-anxious lawyer wife? Like, how do you hide that level of anxiety?
That is the insidious nature of compartmentalization.
Yeah.
I mean, the source material portrays Kelly as someone who is deeply calm, someone who avoids the rat race. Jen always interpreted his demeanor as peaceful simplicity.
Right.
In reality, it was the hypervigilant control of someone managing a double life. But Jen faces a unique, torturous obstacle in confronting him. She cannot sit him down, lay the burner phone on the table, and demand a divorce or an explanation, because the universe is perpetually gaslighting her.
Oh, the daily resets.
Yes, she can have the most profound, earth-shattering confrontation with Kelly today, and tomorrow morning he will wake up with absolutely no memory of it. She's accumulating a massive, crushing burden of knowledge, while her husband's memory is wiped clean every single night.
The isolation of that is just suffocating. I mean, there is a scene that perfectly encapsulates this tragedy. Jen is desperate. She decides she has to prove to Kelly the mechanical reality of what is happening to her.
It's such a sad scene.
It really is. They are sitting together in their car, and Jen uses her knowledge of the future to predict a highly specific, localized event. She points to a stretch of road and tells him, a black Audi is going to come along here, lose control, and flip on its side. The owner will escape unhurt. She knows this because she watched the news report about it in her Tomorrow. And then it happens. The physics of the crash play out exactly as she dictated.
And Kelly's reaction in that moment is stunned. Absolute belief. For a brief, agonizingly beautiful window of time, the isolation is broken. They are a united front against an impossible, terrifying universe.
Yeah.
Kelly holds her. He believes her. But as Jen astutely notes, they are like two passengers standing on two different trains accelerating in opposite directions.
That's a brutal analogy.
He falls asleep. The timeline ticks backward. The next morning, the shared trauma, the unity, the belief, it is entirely erased. To Kelly, it is a normal day. Jen is left holding the ashes of a breakthrough that never happened.
This relentless backward march eventually exhausts the immediate clues. If you're pulling a weed and the roots just keep snapping off in your hands, you eventually realize you have to dig up the entire yard.
Yeah.
The time loop seems to understand this. It stops moving day by day. Instead, it starts violently yanking Jen backward in massive, disorienting leaps, months, then years. It forces her to bypass the symptoms of the crime and confront the foundational lies of her entire adult life.
These deep chronological jumps mark a critical transition in the narrative structure. It really evolves from a tense domestic thriller into a profound philosophical exploration of consequence.
Like when she visits the prison.
Exactly. For instance, the loop drops her on day -105, roughly 3.5 months before the murder. Armed with her future knowledge, Jen visits the crime boss, Joseph Jones, in prison.
So brave.
She utilizes her legal credentials, pretending to be a solicitor representing his interests. But her true objective is to map his exact connection to her family. During this hostile interaction, Joseph Jones makes a passing comment. He doesn't refer to her as Todd's mother or Jen the lawyer. He refers to her specifically as Kelly's wife.
That one phrase is a massive red flag. It confirms Kelly isn't just a peripheral victim being extorted. He is a known entity to a cartel boss.
Yes.
But the timeline doesn't let her linger. It throws her deeper. On day -531, roughly 18 months prior to the murder, Jen wakes up and realizes she has been dropped onto the darkest day of her past. It is the exact day her father dies of a sudden, massive aneurysm.
And this specific jump forces Jen and the listener into a devastating ethical corner. She is physically in the room with her father. He is currently alive, breathing, and conversing, because she has lived this day before. She knows the precise minute the aneurysm will strike. She has her mobile phone in her hand. The mechanical reality is simple. She could dial for an ambulance. She could preempt the strike. She has the power to save her father's life. And yet, she makes the agonizing, conscious decision to do absolutely nothing.
I found this sequence incredibly difficult to digest. She just sits there watching the clock and allows her father to die. It feels cold. It feels almost sociopathic. I mean, I'm struggling to reconcile how a woman whose entire motivation is driven by familial love can passively orchestrate her own father's death.
Well, to understand her inaction, we have to look at the unforgiving mechanics of the butterfly effect, a concept she discussed with Andy Vitesse earlier. We were dealing with the philosophical tension between utilitarianism and deontology.
Okay, unpack that for us.
Sure. If she saves her father, she commits a fundamentally good act in the present moment.
Yeah.
But by altering a massive historical anchor point in her own life, she risks irrevocably shattering the timeline that leads to Todd. If her father survives, Perhaps the subsequent grief doesn't push her and Kelly to make certain vital choices. Perhaps Todd's entire trajectory shifts, placing him in a different, equally fatal danger she can no longer predict.
She realizes that if she changes the variable, she might lose her singular chance to reach the inception point and save her son.
Precisely. It is a horrifying iteration of the trolley problem, but instead of strangers tied to the tracks, it is her father on one side and her son on the other.
Wow.
By choosing not to intervene, she is actively choosing to endure the agonizing trauma of losing her parent all over again, solely to preserve the mathematical probability of saving her child. It demonstrates the brutal, singular focus the time loop demands of her.
It is the ultimate, terrible sacrifice of motherhood. But the universe demands even more. The loop grabs her again, and this time the jump is staggering. It throws her roughly 20 years into the past, landing her in 2003.
A huge jump.
Massive. Todd does not exist yet. She is a young, ambitious lawyer. Operating on the breadcrumbs she gathered in the future, she goes to the Liverpool Crown Court archives. She is hunting for the origin of the crime boss, so she requests the physical file for an old landmark case, RV Joseph Jones.
Yes.
She is flipping through the dusty paperwork, scanning the list of undercover police officers who testified and dismantled Jones's operation 2 decades ago.
And this is where the narrative drops a structural anvil on the listener. Jen is reading the roster of undercover officers, and she stops at a specific name. A name she recognizes from the leather wallet hidden in her teenager's bedroom 20 years in the future.
Ryan Hiles.
Officer Ryan Hiles, badge number 2648. But the revelation isn't just a name. She looks at the archival photograph attached to the officer's file, and she realizes, with horrifying, reality-breaking clarity, that the undercover police officer named Ryan Hiles is her husband, Kelly.
Let's just stop the tape and sit with the magnitude of this. I was absolutely floored. If you are listening, try to apply this to your own life. How is it mechanically, logically possible to stay married to a human being for 20 years?
I know, it's insane.
You share a bed, you navigate mortgages, you raise a child together, you weather illnesses and arguments, and you do not know their actual legal name.
It's completely incomprehensible.
Realizing your husband has faked his identity for 2 decades isn't just a betrayal. It's like finding out you've been playing a cooperative 2-player board game with your partner for 20 years, but they've actually been playing a high-stakes life-or-death survival game on the exact same board, and you never even knew the real rules.
That's a brilliant way to put it.
She states that her entire life is a lie, and she is right.
The cognitive dissonance Jen experiences here is immense. She has to psychologically reconcile 2 diametrically opposed avatars of the same man. There is Kelly, the gentle, stoic, floor-restoring father she loves. And there is Ryan Hiles, a highly trained undercover operative capable of sustaining a sociopathic level of deception every single day for 20 years.
It's so jarring.
But as Jen utilizes her 2003 presence to investigate the RV Joseph Jones case further, she uncovers the mechanical reality of why Ryan had to become Kelly.
Right, because the trope would be that Ryan is just a dirty cop or a lifelong con artist.
Exactly.
But the source material subverts that. Ryan was actually a young, highly idealistic police officer sent deep undercover to infiltrate Joseph Jones's brutal, violent crime ring. And here is the jagged pill Jen has to swallow. During his deep cover infiltration, Ryan discovered that the gang's primary legal facilitator, the man washing their money, hiding their assets, and enabling their violence, was Jen's own father.
Oof. The psychological trap Ryan falls into is devastating. He is investigating a white-collar criminal who is essential to a violent cartel. But during the course of his surveillance, Ryan meets the criminal's daughter, Jen.
Right.
And he does the one thing an undercover operative cannot do. He genuinely, irrevocably falls in love with her. He is paralyzed by a paradox. If he fulfills his sworn duty and takes down the gang, he sends the father of the woman he loves to federal prison, permanently destroying her life and any chance he has with her.
But the situation spirals out of his control before he can make a choice. The source material details a specific sting operation gone horribly wrong.
This part is so stressful.
It really is. The gang's lower-level foot soldiers are out on the street, tasked with stealing cars. They target a vehicle belonging to a neighbor, completely unaware that in the back seat, hidden from view, is a sleeping infant named Eve Green.
Yep.
The car is stolen. The gang panics when they realize they have kidnapped a child. The vehicle is dumped near the port, and the baby, Eve Green, is never found.
And this is the trauma that permanently shatters Ryan's psychological resilience. The missing baby poster Jen found in Todd's room 20 years later is the physical manifestation of Ryan's unending, soul-crushing guilt.
Right, the poster with the pinhole.
Exactly. He knows that if he maintains his cover, or if he testifies openly against the cartel, Joseph Jones will mark him for death, and Jen will inevitably be caught in the crossfire. So Ryan makes a desperate, scorched earth decision.
He blows up his life.
He abandons his entire identity. He quits the police force. He adopts the identity of Kelly, an acquaintance who had recently passed away, and he buries his past. He accepts a life of perpetual deception, not out of malice, but to protect Jen from the violent fallout, to spare her the devastating knowledge of her father's criminal complicity, and to simply be allowed to exist in her orbit.
So if we take all these massive buried puzzle pieces from 2003 and snap them together with the events of Day Zero in 2022, the entire picture finally makes terrifying sense.
It all comes together.
Jen realizes the mechanics of the murder. 20 years later, Joseph Jones is released from prison. He manages to track down the undercover cop who ruined his empire. He finds Ryan Hiles, now living as Kelly. Jones threatens Kelly's wife and his teenage son.
Right.
He demands Kelly perform illegal tasks, running burner phones, facilitating stolen cars, or else his family dies. Todd, who is incredibly observant and fiercely loyal, pieces this extortion together. He finds his father's old police badge. He finds the burner phone. He realizes a monster from his father's past is coming to slaughter his family on Halloween night.
It completely recontextualizes the inciting incident. When we watched Todd plunge the knife into Joseph Jones under that street lamp, we weren't watching a teenager corrupted by gang violence or sudden psychopathy.
Oh, well.
We were watching a terrified, cornered child acting as a human shield. When he held out his bloody hands and said, "I had to," it wasn't a callous dismissal. He was stating an absolute, terrifying fact. He believed, with absolute certainty, that he had no other choice to keep his parents breathing.
Armed with the complete, unvarnished truth, Jen finally reaches the inception point. She's standing in the year 2003, just days before the disastrous car theft that results in baby Eve's disappearance.
Root of it all.
Exactly. She knows why everything happens. The missing baby is the first domino. If Ryan doesn't carry the guilt of the baby, he doesn't need to fake his death. He doesn't need to hide from the cartel in the same way. And the extortion in 2022 never happens. Jen knows exactly what mechanical lever she has to pull.
And the narrative tension in this sequence is masterfully executed. Jen walks into the 2003 police station in Birkenhead. She sits across a desk from Officer Ryan Hiles. This is her future husband, the father of her child, a man she has loved for 2 decades.
But he doesn't know her.
Exactly. To him, she is a complete stranger walking in off the street. It is a beautifully painful interaction. Operating with clinical precision, she anonymously tips him off. She provides the exact street address and the exact time of the impending burglary, 125 Greenwood Avenue.
And then she has to wait to see if the timeline accepts the input. She parks her car on Greenwood Avenue on that freezing January night. She watches the timeline try to unfold.
The stakes are so high here.
So high. The young gang members approach the house to steal the car keys. But because of her intervention, the parameters have changed. The police are already in position. They swarm the teenagers out of the shadows. They arrest them on the pavement before the keys are ever touched, before the car engine is ever started.
The crisis is averted. And McAllister includes an incredibly poignant, quiet detail in the aftermath of the arrest. The mother of baby Eve walks out of the house next door. She is carrying her infant daughter. She securely buckles her into the car seat, completely oblivious to the chaos and the flashing police lights down the street.
She has no idea.
She drives away, entirely unaware of the catastrophic bullet she just dodged. If we pull back and look at the broader philosophical implication of this moment, it speaks to the concept of survivorship bias and the invisible grace of everyday life.
What do you mean by that?
Well, we spend massive amounts of psychological energy agonizing over the tragedies that strike us, the illnesses, the accidents, the betrayals. But we are entirely blind to the near misses.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
The silent disasters that slide past us by mere millimeters every single day because of a delayed train, a forgotten set of keys, or the unseen intervention of a stranger. We only ever register the hits. We are incapable of perceiving the saves.
That is a staggering thought. I mean, how many times has your life been saved today without you knowing it? But for Jen, orchestrating this massive save comes with terrifying personal stakes.
Right, the ripple effects.
By severing the root of the crime, by ensuring the baby is never stolen, and Ryan is never crushed by that specific timeline-altering trauma, does she inadvertently erase her own existence as a mother and a wife?
That's the huge risk.
Right. If Ryan doesn't need to go into deep hiding to escape the cartel's immediate wrath over a missing child, does he still choose to become Kelly? Does he still gravitate toward her? Does the universe still allow Todd to be born?
It is the ultimate gamble of altering the past. You cannot cleanly excise trauma without risking the connective tissue of the relationships formed in its wake. But the source material provides a deeply reassuring answer to this anxiety.
Thank goodness.
Yeah. Jen has a final, revealing interaction with the 2003 version of Ryan. She observes him and realizes that while the timeline has shifted, his core identity remains intact. Even without the crushing guilt of the baby's disappearance dictating his survival tactics, he is inherently the same complex man.
That's beautiful.
It is. He is still guarded, still intensely protective, and fundamentally drawn to her. The timeline reveals that he still chooses to meet her. The universe holds the romance, but it sheds the tragic architecture. He will eventually be able to love her without lying to her for 20 years.
That realization allows her to finally let go. She falls asleep in 2003 and she wakes up. The time loop, having achieved its purpose, snaps violently back to the present day. We reach the epilogue, and the relief is palpable.
It's a relief.
Jen is back in her own bed. It is November 1st, the day after Halloween. She listens intently, and she hears the heavy footsteps of a teenager on the stairs. Todd is home. He is safe. She runs to the window, and the driveway is completely clean. The wrought iron lamp is just a lamp.
No blood.
No blood. And when Jen cautiously asks Todd a testing question about his girlfriend Cleo, the niece of the crime boss, Todd looks at her with genuine teenage confusion and asks, "Who's Cleo?"
The slate has been wiped clean. The nightmare was not just survived, it was systematically unwritten. The timeline healed itself around her intervention.
Having successfully navigated this labyrinth alongside Jen, I want to pull back the curtain and examine the architecture of the source material itself. How does an author conceptualize a story this mechanically complex?
The author's note provides a fascinating glimpse into that process, actually. Gillian McAllister states that the inspiration arrived via a text message to a fellow author, Holly Seddon, in late 2019. She simply wrote, "I want to write a book like Russian Doll, but about knife crime, told backwards."
That is such a brilliant elevator pitch.
It is. And what makes this structural choice so brilliant is how perfectly the rigid mechanical rules of time travel serve the fluid psychological themes of the novel. When a sudden act of violence occurs in our reality, our immediate psychological response is to rewind.
Right. What if?
Exactly. We obsessively ask, what if I had taken a different route yesterday? What if I had asked him a question a year ago? McAllister didn't just write a time travel book. She took the emotional process of grief and regret, and she literalized it into a physical journey.
I think that structural brilliance is what makes the core theme of the book so resonant. The entire novel is a profound meditation on the anxieties of parenthood. We discussed the hindsight paradox earlier, how Jen spent her life blaming herself for every microscopic failure, assuming her inadequacies would inevitably ruin her son.
And the time loop strips away the luxury of self-pity. It forces her to meticulously review the empirical evidence of her son's life, not through the warped lens of maternal guilt, but through the rigorous lens of objective investigation.
Yeah.
And the conclusion she is forced to accept is radically different from her fears. She didn't raise a corrupted monster. She raised an incredibly observant, fiercely loyal, and terrifyingly brave young man who was willing to sacrifice his freedom, his future, and his soul to protect his parents from violence.
Wow.
In a deeply twisted, paradoxical way, the investigation proves that the love she instilled in him worked entirely too well.
That is such a profound reframing. The best way I can conceptualize Jen's journey through the loop is to imagine being handed a massive family photo album, but being forced to flip through it back to front.
Okay, I like that.
You start on the last page, which is dominated by the messy, complicated, bloody reality of the present. But as you turn the pages backward, you are forced to strip away the daily grind, the accumulated resentments, the lies, and the unspoken secrets. You keep turning until you reach the very first pages, and you are reminded of the pure, unadulterated, foundational love that built the architecture of the family in the first place. The day they met. The day he was born.
Exactly. It argues that the past is not merely a static repository of our worst mistakes and traumas. It is the vital bedrock of our connections. Jen had to willingly descend into the absolute darkest, most terrifying caverns of her family's history in order to rediscover the initial spark of light that started it all.
What an incredible journey to unpack. We started on a freezing, blood-stained driveway on Halloween night, paralyzed by a mother watching her son commit an inexplicable act of violence, and we traveled backward, unraveling layers of deception day by day, year by year, all the way to a rainy 2003 police stakeout.
It's a huge scope.
Jen proved that the past is never truly dead and buried. It is a living, breathing mechanism, just sitting there in the dark, waiting to be properly understood.
And the narrative fundamentally challenges the listener to reevaluate their understanding of causality. It insists that the present moment you are currently experiencing is not a fixed, inevitable point, but rather the precarious, accumulated weight of thousands of invisible historical choices made by people you may never even fully know.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive, I want you, the listener, to pause and consider the invisible threads currently holding your own life together. Think about the near misses you never saw coming, the secrets your parents kept to protect you, the seemingly random encounters that altered your trajectory forever.
And I will leave you to chew on this final unsettling thought. If you were suddenly forced to live your life in reverse, waking up yesterday and the day before that, scrolling backward through the code of your own existence, what seemingly insignificant, mundane decision from a decade ago would you discover is the actual structural linchpin holding your entire current reality together? Once you start pulling at those threads, you might never look at a stranger passing you on the street or the person sleeping next to you in bed the same way ever again.